And welcome to the fifth part of the 1.3 lesson. Today we're going to be continuing our talk on equivalent rational numbers. Here are the learning objectives for 1.3. They've been the same as all the other videos. So today we're going to start by writing decimals as fractions. So now that we've mastered writing fractions as decimals, it'd be good to know how to do it the other way around. Okay, so if we consider the decimal 0.1, we already know that we can say that this number is 1/10. It's very easy to rewrite decimals as fractions because decimals are already expressed as fractions with a denominator that is a factor of 10. So as you can see here, we have 0.1 is 1/10. That can be done the same way that we were doing it earlier in 1/2, where the number after the decimal gets put on the top, and on the bottom of the fraction it's 1 and then as many zeros as we have numbers to the right of the decimal. So 0.1 is 1/10, 0.01 1/100, 0.86 is 86/100. So again, however many numbers are to the right of the decimal, that's how many zeros we have. So our first example, we're going to convert 0.35 to a fraction. Okay, so 0.35. Again, that 35 that's to the right of the decimal, that goes on the top of our fraction. Okay, on the bottom we put a 1 and then a 0 for every number that we put on the top. So a 0 for the 3 and a 0 for the 5. So 35/100. Now the one thing that we need to do is we need to be able to simplify it as needed. 35 and 100, I can take a 5 out of both. So I'm going to divide both sides by 5. 35 divided by 5 is 7. 100 divided by 5 is 20. So my fraction for 0.35 is actually going to be 7/20. We do the same thing with converting 2.4 to a mixed number. Okay, so 2.4. Okay, to start out with, again, we start off with the 0.4. So 0.4. The 4 goes on the top. And on the bottom, a 1, and then 1 for every 0, or a 0 for every number that's on top. So 4/10. I need to simplify that down because I can take a 2 out of both 4 and 10, leaving 2/5. So if I can write 0.4 as 2/5, I take this 2/5 down and I add it to the 2 that was in front of our decimal. So 2 plus 2/5 would give me 2 and 2/5. So we've got 3 more examples here where we're going to convert decimals into fractions. So we've got 0.5, 0.67, and 3.21. I want you to pause the video, convert all of these to fractions, and then go ahead and hit play and see how you did. Okay, so here we go. Our first example is 0.5. Okay, I take all the numbers to the right of the decimal, which is just a 5, and I put that on top. And on the bottom I put a 1 and then a 0 for every number that was to the right of it, of the decimal. So I put 1, 0. So it's 5/10. And I can divide the top and the bottom by 5 to get 1/2. The second one, 0.67. Okay, I put 67 on top because that's all the numbers to the right of the decimal point. On the bottom I put a 1 and then a 0 for every number to the right of the decimal. So I got a 0 for the 6 and a 0 for the 7, giving me 100 on the bottom. 67/100 cannot be simplified because I can't take anything out of both numbers. Last one, 3.21. The 3 stays out as a whole number. The 21 goes on the top of the fraction, and on the bottom I put 100 because there's 2 zeros because there's 2 numbers to the right of the decimal. Okay, so now we're going to compare and order decimals and fractions. Now eventually you'll be able to convert common fractions to decimals and vice versa in your head. You probably already know some of the more common ones, like 0.5 is the same as a half. Knowing this off the top of your head will make it easy for you to compare and order between fractions and decimals. For now, we will practice our newly acquired skills at converting to compare and order. It's always helpful to check. Okay, so we're going to take a look at another comparison here on the next slide. So we're going to compare 1/4 to 0.25. Okay, so since we're converting decimals to fractions, we are going to take 0.25 and turn it into a fraction and compare it to 1/4. Okay, so 0.25. Okay, I I take the numbers to the right of the decimal and I put it on top, and on the bottom I put a 1, and then as many zeros as I have numbers to the right of the decimal. I've got 2 numbers to the right, so I'm going to put 2 zeros there, so I've got 25 over 100. Now, I can take a 5 out of both of those. 25 divided by 5 is 5, 100 divided by 5 is 20. I look again, I can take some more out. I can divide another 5. So I do that, and I get 1 over 4. So I am comparing 1/4 to 1/4. Okay? These are the same fraction. So I'm going to use the equal to. So 1/4 and 1/4 are equal. If we want to write it in terms of how they wanted us to compare it, 1/4 and 0.25, I would still say that they are equal. So now we're going to compare 1 and 2/20 and 1.30. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to do this on your own. So remember, you're either going to use greater than, less than, or equal to. Those are the 3 that you get to choose from. So I want you to take 1.30 and convert it into a fraction, and then compare it to 1 and 2/20. So pause the video, do all your work, and then go ahead and hit play and see how you did. Alright, so here we go. The first thing I did is I took 1.3 and I turned it into a fraction of 1 and 30 over 100. I noticed that 30 over 100, I could divide the top and the bottom by 5, so I got 1 and 6/20. Divide both top and bottom by 2 again, and I get 1 and 3/10. Then I took a look at 1 and 2 over 20. 2 over 20, I can take out a 2 from the top and the bottom, so that's what I did. So I took 1 and 2/20 and turned it into 1 and 1/10. So then I look at 1 and 1/10 compared to 1 and 3/10. The number in the front is the same, so the 1s are the same. The denominators are the same, so I just compare the tops. Which one is bigger, 1 or 3? 3 is bigger, so I would use the less than sign. So therefore, using the original numbers that they gave me, I would say that 1 and 2/20 is less than 1.30.